play. Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. My name is Jim, and we're going to be talking about some safeties and tight ends today. But before we dive in, Josh, how you doing?
Good. Glad to be back. It's the third time this week we're on, so we're getting a lot of draft content out to you guys this week, and we're going to for the rest of the year leading up to the draft season. Today, we got a good slate of safety, some quality tight ends we're going to be talking about. If you guys haven't already, make sure to follow both Bill and NFL Draft Fanatic on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Stay in touch with us. We're giving you the best draft content, hands down, all day, every day. So, Bill, right on to you.
Yep, absolutely. Like Josh said, we appreciate you guys sticking around for us. We're starting to get into the swing of things. Senior Bowl invites are going out. East-West Shrine Bowl invites are going out. We're starting to hit the swing of things. We're going to talk some safeties. We're going to talk some tight ends. We're going to have some comps. We're going to have a little bit of everything for you today. First one on the docket, Andrew Mukuba from Texas. We're going to start big in the Lone Star State. Andrew Mukuba, 6', 185. Big thing about him is he's fast. He's got some blazing speed. He's athletic. He's the new age safety. He's a guy that can turn and run with some of the faster, more athletic tight ends. He's got very strong coverage skills too. He can play in man coverage. He can play in zone coverage. He's not that just one style of safety, but he is a solid tackler in space. So if he does have to make those tackles, he's very good at it. He's also very durable. He's shown the ability to stay healthy. The biggest knock that I have on him, though, is he is slightly undersized. While it's 6', 185, it's a light 185. You can tell by the photo here. It's pretty light, which is going to cause some concerns when you go up against some of those bigger tight ends that could knock him around. In addition to that, while he is a solid tackler, his angles are just not great. There are a lot of times where he's really over-aggressive and he tries to take the wrong angle. And, he could improve consistently in his consistency in finishing those tackles. So that's what I would love to see from him. Despite all that, though, I have a third-round grade on him. He's firmly in my top 175. And he reminds me a lot of Javon Holland from the Miami Dolphins, that same style of safety. He's really good in coverage, better in coverage than he is in run support. He's going to be that nickel package safety that you can put up against the opposing tight ends and running backs. But Josh, what did you see in Andrew's tape?
Almost eerily the same thing as you said. His biggest thing that he brings to his table is his athletic ability and play speed, like you mentioned. His hip fluidity goes well with that. He's able to travel well in open space and zone coverage, especially working intermediate and deep routes over top of him. He's able to pick up concepts, pass them off, really travel well. You saw that in the Georgia game this year. That was really promising for me. He was a freshman that started right away for Clemson. His last year at Clemson was the only real concern you had with Mukuba. He had more of a down year in his third year with Clemson, hence the transfer to Texas. He showed improvements in his run tackling and support. Like you said, the angles need to be better, and he does need to add functional play strength at the next level. And I think he can do that without losing significant speed because he is such a fast and explosive person in the open field. But he has improved, especially working downhill. You don't see a lack in toughness or a lack in will of trying to make those tackles, which is one thing that really caught my eye when watching Mukuba this year. Mental processing is good. He's able to play both man and zone, like Bill said. And because of that good athletic ability, his range is going to be off the charts, working sideline to sideline, plays backside away from him. He'll never give up on a play in my mind. So like you said, I don't see him falling out of day 2 in my mind. I think he's too good of an athlete to fall out of day 2, and really eerily similar to the Javon Holland comp. I really like that from Bill.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
So,
go ahead, Bill.
So let me ask you this, Josh. For me, as a scout and an analyst, when I always see transfers from one big school to another, going back to Mukuba, does that put any sort of flag or a beige flag, as I like to call it, in your scouting report when you see a guy go from a large school to a large school like that?
It's so different now with how NIL and money plays a factor into everything today. It's really a case-by-case thing. Mukuba's situation is going to be compared different to, let's say, Quinshon Judkins transferring from Ole Miss to Ohio State. Even though those, like, big school to big school, it's hard to say now because you also see a lot of smaller school guys get moved up to Power 4 teams in the NIL. So it's really hard to say right now just because of how new NIL is. We'll get a better feel of this 5 years from now when we start seeing these freshmen that are getting like $10 million offers. Bryce Underwood.
The Bryce Underwoods of the world,
Yeah, one thing that's not talked about enough is, let's say, what the positional coaches, how they're interacting with the players. So, like, Keon Coleman was just in the news because he called out his old wide receiver coach at Florida State, and Florida State just fired that wide receiver coach. But we didn't hear anything about that wide receiver coach during the draft process because that would look bad on Coleman if he's thrown a coach under the bus, right?
Yeah.
So the only time you're ever going to hear about bad coaching is after the players have been drafted, right?
Yeah, long gone.
So you don't know, to Josh's point, you don't know if there was an issue with one of the coaches at Clemson and he just knew he had to get out. Right, and we're probably not going to ever know that.
Right, exactly. And that's the one thing, especially when we get in the Combine and Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl, those interviews, those types of things are going to be asked. Hey, you were a top dog at Clemson. What made you switch to Texas? And he can, the proper answer is I wanted more competition. That's going to shoot his stock up. In the Keon Coleman case, my wide receiver coach was terrible. That's going to drop his stock.
Yep. And there is a positive, though, with coaches, and we can transition that to Iowa. Because if your school is always putting out tight ends or is always putting out solid defensive backs, you know that there's good coaching. Exactly. Because we had Cooper DeJean at Iowa last year, and now we have Sebastian Castro at Iowa this year. So, Bill, what do you think of Sebastian Castro?
Absolutely. Just like you hit on it, Sebastian Castro from Iowa, 5'11", 205 is where I've got him. Going to Iowa is definitely big for him. The biggest thing that I saw from him is he closes on ball carriers quickly. He's got a very quick accelerator. He can go from 0 to 60 in 2.5. He will get to the ball carriers quickly. Very good short area quickness. He has a high football IQ, and that's also from that coaching at Iowa. You see it on tape. He diagnoses plays quickly. He takes the proper angles. He's got a nose for the football. He's made several pass breakups, several interceptions, so he's a ball hawk style player, an aggressive tackler. Mukuba, we talked about, is over aggressive in his angles. Castro, I compare him to a bear in a phone booth. Once he gets to you, he's going to be aggressive and taking you down. The big knocks on him, obviously 5'11", 205. It's a little bit of undersized, especially against those larger tight ends. He is relatively inexperienced as a full-time starter, so a lot of teams are going to question that is this production consistent? Is this the start of his development curve? My big yellow flag, it's not quite red, he's going to be an older rookie. He's going to be 25 years old when he hits the league. So he's going to be a little bit older, so it's going to limit his upside. Is this where he's going to be, or are we talking about a guy who's going to continue to develop 27, 28, 29 years old? All that said, I think he's firmly in my top 175. Is a day 3 talent right at the start of round 4. Reminds me a lot of Adrian Amos, the safety from the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. That same style of guy in a phone booth, very aggressive with his tackling, He's got play recognition skills and a good football IQ, a good guy you can put in the back of your defense. Or my best spot for Castro would be on someone's special teams as a gunner shooting down the field. But Josh, what'd you see in Sebastian Castro's tape?
Like you said, the age 25 is going to be the biggest question mark for NFL scouts, projecting him to the next level, seeing if there's any room to grow at the next level. But for me, if he stays where he is right now and where he is graded for me right now, I would take him in the NFL right then and there without even adding any potential future value he can add to himself. But like you said, what he brings in run support and tackling, he does not lack in coverage either. He's more than a good zone cover corner/safety. He also is very competitive in man coverage. You saw against Ohio State, even when he got beat on the out route, it wasn't for a lack of trying. He was in position the whole entire time. That's something I'd love to see out of Sebastian Castro at a smaller size. Like you said, the biggest thing he brings to the table is his football IQ, especially on run defense. For a guy smaller at his size, he does not lack in play strength, and he's really quick to accelerate to get to the ball into the backfield. Even if you send him on a nickel blitz, he's easily able to make havoc on the quarterback. Solid athletic ability for me. He's not going to be the fastest guy on the field. He's not going to wow you with his athleticism, but comparing the nickels that we have in this draft class, I think he's firmly up there for me as a nickelback and one of the better nickelbacks in this draft class. Right now, I would see him going somewhere in the third round, earliest of day 4 if he falls into day 3. But I love the floor that Sebastian Castro brings with his run support, his football IQ, and he's a solid cover safety, corner, nickel, wherever you want to put him. So I like the high floor with Sebastian Castro, and I think he's a 2-contract player, and he could play for close to 10 years in the NFL if he stays healthy.
Yeah, he's that Swiss Army knife that defensive coordinators are always looking for, whether it's put him in the box, whether it's put him in coverage, put him in the nickel, that defensive coordinators are going to want to use against the top tier tight ends, the Travis Kelce's, the Mark Andrews, the Isaiah Likely's of the world that are super athletic.
Yep.
Hence the reason we're covering tight ends later on in the episode, because we got to cover the other side of the ball of what they're going to be covering too.
So do you think safety is the right label? Because I've seen him corner, and I think the nickel label that you both have put on him is generally what I've read. But would you label him corner, safety, or just good football player?
I would label him just good football player.
Yep.
I would label him probably defensive back more than anything, because he's a guy that I could put in that nickel spot. He's a guy that I could put back in the safety in the deep third of the field. I don't know if I'd necessarily trust him on the boundary, just because there are some concerns with being grabby. He's not a Cooper DeJean type of player that you can put on the boundary. He doesn't have that style of athletic profile, but you could definitely put him in the slot. You could use him in nickel packages, and you could put him as a box safety as well.
Absolutely agree.
Next one. Oh, go ahead. So
take it away,
next
Josh.
one on the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, take it away, Josh. So
we'll
all share it together. We're all just so excited. We'll share it together.
So Hunter Wohler, senior out of Wisconsin, I have him at 6'1" and 3/10" 213. I think that was verified by Jim Nagy on his Twitter page. Biggest thing he brings is his ball skills and instincts, run support and tackling, and his play strength and toughness for me. He's a well-filled safety. He could add mass at the next level, but I think he's fine at 218 right now. He gets downhill really easily. His run support and tackling is a highlight for me. Play strength, like I just mentioned. Solid athletic ability with good toughness and good mental processing. He won't lack in assignments and zone coverage. If he loses, it's not because he's out of position. Solid range for me, brings good versatility, can line up in both safety spots, and you can drop him down to the line of scrimmage if you want. I think he's a solid cover safety as well. He's not going to be one of these elite cover safeties that we're covering, but he's absolutely going to bring a good floor in the coverage role. Solid play speed for me. The only knock I have on him is adequate hip fluidity. I think he has trouble opening his hips, especially going downfield when he's running down with vertical seams. So that's my only concern with Wohler, but I really do like what he brings in the run game for me. I have him firmly as an early day 3 grade, right around the 4th to 5th round range, and I really do think that he'll make an immediate impact year 1 as a safety.
Awesome. So everything's spot on. I've got to agree with you on Hunter. I'm a little higher on him than you are. Mm-hmm. I've got him firmly in the 175, right around that late 2nd round grade. The big thing that I love that he does is the open field tackling. We talked about it. His 2023, 120 tackles for a safety. That's out of this world. He also is an effective blitzer. He goes on a lot of blitzes, especially in that Wisconsin defense. A lot of cornerback blitzes, a lot of safety blitzes. So he's very effective. You called it the hip stiffness. It's like watching your grandpa try to turn in the nursing home to get to the early dinner, the way he turns his hips. It's rough. The other thing that I've seen pop up here recently, and it's concerning, it hasn't led to any issues over the top yet, but his eye discipline against play action passes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's an over aggression thing, or I don't know if it's him just trying to make a play, but a lot of times he's biting on these play fakes, which it can be coached out at the next level. The problem is, since he doesn't really have that top end speed to get back, if he bites, somebody's tight end is hitting it up the seam and taking it to the house. So, but I agree with you. I think he's firmly in my top 175. I have him right around late second round. Reminds me a lot of Rayshon Jenkins type of safety for the Seahawks and the Jaguars, that really box style tackler that gets downhill in a hurry. You can use him in certain coverages. I wouldn't put him on the boundary on the outside as a safety. I would use him probably as a box style, maybe even in some nickel corner packages.
And then you got it. Sorry.
So, Bill, if you've got Wohler, like it sounds like pretty close to your top 70, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who is the safety in front of him on your board, and who's the next safety behind him?
So the safety in front of him would be Kevin Winston from Penn State, the very athletic style guy. And then right behind him, it's a tie for two. The first one is Xavier Nwankpa from Iowa, the other side of the Castro coin. And then also Jahdae Barron from Texas. I know Jahdae is playing corner this year, but I actually prefer him as a safety. I think he's better in the safety than he is in the boundary. Reminds me a lot of, it's kind of a cheap comp because they both went to Texas, but Kenny Vaccaro, in the fact that Vaccaro could play boundary corner, and he did very well in Tennessee. But when you circled him around to that single high top safety look, he was almost unbeatable. Mm-hmm. I think if Barron comes out, that's going to be the conversation teams have with him is, hey, you were doing really great at safety. What made you want to switch to corner? But right now, he's right there. But yeah, Wohler, I have Winston ahead of him, and then Barron and Nwankpa right behind him.
Yeah. And then, Josh, where do you have Barron and Nwankpa on your board? Are they ahead of Wohler?
I don't have Nwankpa graded right now. I'm still first getting into safeties. But let me go back to my board. I know I have Mukuba graded above him. I have Sanker graded slightly above him, which we'll talk about next. And then I have Castro obviously graded above him. But like you said on Barron, I think he would fit really good in a nickel role in the NFL. I think he's a plug-and-play nickel in the NFL. That's the one guy I have above Castro in the nickel role. I think he brings a lot of versatility and a lot of just sound football to the nickel position.
Yep, absolutely, 100%.
And our last safety of the day, Jonas Sanker from Virginia. So, Josh, you want to kick this one off?
So, Jonas Sanker is one of my favorite prospects at the safety position. I was talking about a little bit about this before. I got him at 6 foot and 5/10 inch at 210 pounds. Just got the first safety Senior Bowl invite that I saw. I probably is going to accept that. I have no doubt in my mind. But we can talk about what he's good at when we're talking about grading players. When we're talking about football players that turn it on when the lights are brightest on fourth down and they need crucial stops, Sanker is your guy, and he's been that guy for 2 years. First team All-ACC last year. Brings good ball skills and instincts to the table with good play speed, does not lack there. His run support and tackling has gotten so much better over the past couple years. It's actually become a strong suit for him, in my opinion. Solid play strength, good toughness, like we mentioned, especially on crucial fourth down and got to have it scenarios for the defense. Brings good athletic ability with good fluent movement skills in both man and zone coverage. Doesn't lack in mental processing. Solid range for me. He's not the most rangiest safety in the world. And the only knock I have on him, just like we talked about with Wohler, it's not the best hip fluidity in the world. I wouldn't say it's as bad at Wohler's. I wouldn't say solid either. I would just say it's an adequate hip fluidity. And I think it's something that he could genuinely get better at in the next level just because of his athletic profile. He's a fluent mover in the open field. I just don't understand why his hips are so tight as they are. But yeah, Jonas Sanker is going to rise up a lot of boards when we start getting into the offseason, when Senior Bowl starts rising up. Right now, I have a late third to an early fourth round grade on Sanker.
Yep, absolutely. Josh, you hit on everything. I'm a little lower on him a little bit just because of that hip fluidity that we talk about. I also have concerns about his top end burst and him getting back and playing in the deep third of the field. But he is a box style safety. He's the guy that I can't wait. I hope he does accept the Senior Bowl invite, and I can't wait to see him do so. He's the type of guy I want to see in those one-on-one Oklahoma drills. Line spreads out, and it's him head up versus a running back, because he is a very good tackler. I mean, just looking at his statistics from this year so far, he's already got 69 tackles this year, at 107 last year. As a safety, having 100 plus tackles, that immediately throws up a flag of, okay, this guy clearly knows how to tackle and knows what he's doing in that tackle. He also is very good at sniffing out run plays. When we talked about Wohler with his play fake issue, Sanker doesn't have that issue. He has the opposite end of the spectrum. He knows what the offense is going to do before they do it. He reminds me a lot of Byron Jones, the safety corner from the Dallas Cowboys, later on in the Miami Dolphins, where he's this guy. He's very versatile. I could use him in a nickel package. I could use him as a safety. I don't know necessarily if I would play Sanker on the boundary because of that top end burst concern. If I had to, if it's 4th and long and I play him 10, 15 yards deep to where he doesn't have to worry about catching up, I will do that. But I think Sanker's going to be one of those Senior Bowl invites that teams are going to go back and they're going to watch that tape and they're going to see 60 plus tackles already this year, 100 tackles last year, 60 plus tackles the year before. They're going to see a tackling monster, and teams are going to be crawling all over themselves to take him right at the top of day 3.
Absolutely.
Cool. So before we transition to tight ends, I want to remind anybody watching or listening, please like, follow, subscribe. So subscribe to YouTube. We have content on the channel every day. Please follow Josh. Please follow Bill. Josh is at juice_T23. Bill is at Spark Scouting. I am at NFL Draft Fanatic. There is no I in Fanatic, at least on my Twitter. So with that being said, tight end Justin Joly. Bill, what can you tell us about Mr. Joly?
All right. So tight end Justin Joly from NC State, 6'3", 235. He is a very fun tight end, and I like to call him the lunch pail guy. He's the type of guy where he's going to go and he's going to be very good at the point of attack. He's a very good inline blocker. By that same token, he does also have very good hands. He also has the skill set and athleticism to be that spread it out type of guy. I really love him on in breaking routes and out breaking routes with how crisp he is and how well he sits down in zone coverage. The problem is that he doesn't create much leverage with that skill set. And also it seems like he's struggling to figure out what his skill set actually is. Granted, he just came from a transfer from UConn last year, so this is his first big season of Power 5 football. So he's still trying to develop into his own as a tight end. In addition to that, 6'3", 235, he looks bulky, but the frame's a little light in the jeans, so he might get pushed around in run blocking. In terms of Joly, I have him as a draftable grade, but he's outside my top 175 right now. He sits squarely in my 7th round. I think he would probably do well and benefit with coming back to school. That's probably going to be his best scenario. But he reminds me a lot of Drew Sample, tight end from the Cincinnati Bengals, in that same concept. He was a clock in, do the 9 to 5, do the nitty gritty run blocking, and then clock out. But you knew there was more from him. And Josh, what did you see from Mr. Joly at NC State?
Justin Joly, I have 6'3", dead even. There's a little variability on what his weight. Some sites have him at 235, others have him around 245, and you see kind of a little bit in the middle on his film that he's hovering right in the middle between there. I think his biggest issue coming into this year was run blocking. You saw that at UConn. He wasn't asked much to do that, and I think he's taken a massive step of trying to improve that this year. I think it's still solid at best, but he's definitely put the toughness and the work into making himself a better inline blocker. I think this guy gives you a lot of alignment versatility, not only as an H-back, but he can also line up on the outside if you need it on one-on-one coverage. I saw that at UConn. He was able to create separation off the line, which was really good to see. I think he's just a solid 4 guy all in all. Solid hands, solid release, solid yard after catch if he's schemed up right in the open middle field and play action passes. Improved on his blocking. I think he shines best with his body control / catching traffic, like you mentioned, when he's high pointing the ball. With his frame and his length, he really does have advantage over small defensive backs. Solid play strength. I think he does have room to add mass at the next level, and that will be the biggest thing for him, maintaining that play speed as well as adding functional play strength. But overall, like you said, I have around the 6th to 7th round grade on him, but I do think he'll end up returning for one more year to improve his draft stock. But a lot of tools in the table for Justin Joly, and I think definitely will be a draftable prospect whenever he decides to come out.
Yep, 100% agree.
Caden.
All right, next up,
Ole Miss.
Caden Prieskorn from Ole Miss. So 6'5", 255 on the slide. I've seen 6'6", 253. So we're talking in that very tight, very high range. The big thing I love about him is that size and frame. Whether it's 6'5", 6'6", 255, 253, you see it right there in the photo. He's a very big body frame. He's got what I like to call a zip code catch radius. If it's anywhere in his zip code, he's going and he's getting it. He's very natural handed. He plucks the ball out of the air very well. In addition to that, he can line up in line in the slot. He can line up in the tight end. He can line up as a fullback, an H-back. He is a Swiss Army knife that you can put all over the field. The big thing is, though, he does lack elite athleticism and speed. So a lot of the tight ends in this class are very athletic. They have a lot of speed. They have a lot of verticality to them. Caden doesn't have that. Caden is a baller. He's got those good hands. In addition to that, I would love to see him work on his route running. A lot of times it's very, very stiff when he's creating separation at the top. Most of the top tier tight ends, they can easily flow right into his zone coverage. Caden almost looks like he has to think once he gets to the top of his route. That being said, right now he is squarely in my round 7 outside of my top 175 just because he doesn't have that elite athleticism and other more athletic guys are passing him by. He sits right there around 7. Reminds me a lot of A.J. Barner, the Seattle Seahawks, that same guy. He's a very good pass catcher. He's going to do all the things that you need him to do. He's just not going to be that elite athletic style of tight end that we're seeing in the NFL. But Josh, what'd you see from Caden's tape?
I think Caden is going to make his money in the NFL in 12 and 13 personnel sets in the NFL. His biggest thing that he brings, not only with his hands, but his blocking, especially in line. It's one of the better ones when you're comparing the rest of these tight ends in this class, which are more centered around pass catching and route running. He brings the blocking and the physicality to the table. I think he has good hands, especially with balls outside of his frame. You saw that in the Penn State game when he was highly targeted. He was almost a vacuum over the middle of the field. I think he can improve on his release and his yard after catch. Like you mentioned, he's a solid athlete at best. He's not going to wow you with his speed or lateral movement abilities. So if he's matched up man-to-man coverage off the line of scrimmage, I do think he needs to improve his release and yards after catch. But solid athletic ability, good play strength, adequate separation quickness, and play speed for me, but brings good mental processing and good toughness to the table, which will always almost garner a spot for you on a 53-man roster. So I have around 6th grade on Caden Prieskorn. I think his hands, compared to how good of a route runner he is, it's almost like an outlier how good he is catching the ball compared to him getting off the line of scrimmage. So that'll be a plus for him. It'll raise him up kind of being on the undrafted free agent, priority free agent type tier list. But I do think he'll make his money on 12 and 13 personnel in the NFL.
Yep, I agree. I think the other thing he'll make his money on too, especially, is in special teams.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are going to need those extra bodies in special teams. I think he's going to do very well there as well. So,
and I also like the call out, Josh, that you did there with he's going to make his living in 12 and 13. So, yeah, NFL rosters, everybody likes to talk about the starting tight end that's going to get somebody the fantasy points. He's not going to be your fantasy tight end, but you can have a 10 to 15 year career as a tight end 2 or a tight end 3, playing about 10 snaps a game and playing special teams, right? Like there's a spot in the NFL for a player like this. You just don't put him on your fantasy team.
Yeah, exactly. Let me also ask you this, Josh, before we jump into Jack, about Caden. How much of his production do you think is due to the offense that he's in with Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart as his quarterback?
I think it's really contributed to that. I think it's also very contributed to how his relationship with Jackson Dart is. Him being a safety blanket for Dart, especially on panic scenarios when he needs to get the ball out and just kind of abandon his reads and get somebody over the intermediate part. I think he's one of Dart's favorite targets when he's under duress, and he's more than a reliable hands catcher. So I don't think that'll be an issue at the next level. But Lane Kiffin is an offensive mastermind. We got to give him his flowers.
Yep, absolutely. I think we'll talk about it more when we get to hashtag quarterback week, especially when a team drafts Jackson Dart and they come back in that round, that day 3, and then here's his top target and Caden Prieskorn. Could be a very easy selection for that team too. All right. Next on the docket, Jack Velling from Michigan State. 6'5", 245, 246, 244, right in there. The big thing about Jack is he's got very good top-end speed ratio. He can stretch defenses vertically, creates very consistent separation. He is very, very soft-handed and a very natural pass catcher. He also can adjust very well to off-target throws outside of his frame. If that ball is off-target, he can turn around and he can get it. The one thing that I really love that he does is he's a savvy route runner. It's scary. He can break off of routes easily, breaking in the field, out of the field. In zone coverage, he sits right down, right where he needs to be, allowing his quarterback to get the ball right to him. In addition to that, he also has special teams experience. He's played on field goal protection packages. He's played on punt coverages. He's played on kickoff returns. So that's also going to get him on a roster. The other problem that I see is that he's got some limited play strength at the point of attack. He's not a great blocker in the run game. Almost seems a little light in the pants, which is concerning because we're talking about a guy who's 246 pounds, but it seems a little bit light. In addition to that, his hand placement is very inconsistent. On one play, it's right where it needs to be, and then on the next play, they're going to throw a flag in the NFL because it's going to look like holding. So it's very inconsistent play to play. The other thing is that I've also seen in longer breaking routes, typically in the deeper part of the field, 15, 20 yards down, his hips almost lock up and they get stiff, almost like he's not sure where he needs to transition to. It's mostly deep crossing routes. Hasn't really led to any major issues so far, but it was one of my little beige flags that I like to put a pin in and come back to. But I think all in all, Jack Velling is a day 3 guy. He is in my round 4, right around my top 175 marker. Reminds me a lot of Brevin Jordan from the Houston Texans. One of those guys, again, going to be your tight end 2 option. He's going to come in, especially on passing downs, give you another passing option, especially in the short and intermediate game, be a blanket for a young quarterback, like a CJ Stroud style type of young quarterback. But Josh, what you see on Jack on the tape?
I think we're seeing a tale of two tapes with Jack Velling. Last year at Oregon State tape versus this year at Michigan State tape. It's very night and day. And it's almost a prospect that we're going to have to talk about more in the light of this is more of an NFL caliber player when we're talking about his route running ability in the intermediate parts of the field and his movement skills and his pass catching ability rather than what he's put in now at Michigan State. I don't think the situation he's in right now is good compared to where he was last year, but it also shows the weaknesses in his game. But let's talk about the positives first, not put a dark light on Jack Velling. He's a plus hands catcher with solid release and solid yards after catch, especially when he gets the ball in his hand. Good body control, just like most of these receivers. He has good top end speed for a guy that's on the 250-pound range. He's really athletic, especially in the middle of the field. Solid separation quickness, like you said. I think he brings solid mental processing, both as a blocker and as a route runner. And his toughness is not for a lack of trying and blocking. He brings good toughness to the table. He's in a really bad situation with Michigan State right now. But his blocking is a big concern for me. You saw Oregon State last year try to limit how much effective he was as a blocker. They put him on the outside or really line him up as more of like a F tight end, not really on the line of scrimmage. And then this year at Michigan State, he's playing more inline tight end blocking, and it's limiting his roles as a route runner. It's limiting really him being able to work off the line of scrimmage, and they're moving him to more as an inline blocker. And you see the struggles there with his play strength, where his use of hands, his ability to anchor down and really seal off an edge when needed to. So I think this is a guy that's going to benefit from returning next year. I don't think he's going to come out this year just because of the situations he's in. He might even transfer out because he transferred with Aiden Childs from Oregon State to Michigan State. And we'll have to monitor that during the offseason to see if he sticks with it and they improve their situation there. But I do think this is a guy that's going to be a better NFL tight end than he is a college tight end. And he's in the wrong situation right now. So it's hard to grade and knock a guy for his athletic ability and his route running ability, but I do want to see improvements in his blocking. So it's a guy to monitor. If he was to come out this year, see a 5th to 6th round grade on Jack Velling. I have him in the 4 tight ends we're talking about as the last tight end on this board. But if we're just grading him off his Oregon State tape last year, he will probably be number 2 on this board. So it's a tale of 2 tapes for Jack Velling. I really do want to see him return next year and improve on his situation.
Yep, no, I 100% agree. That was the first thing that I circled at the top of my scouting report when I made the initial report was that he's got to return to school. Even though I have him in my top 175, this is a guy that if he returns to school and finds the right situation, like you talked about, I don't think the situation he's in right now with Aiden Childs and that offense, I don't think it benefits him as a pass catcher. I think he needs to go to a scheme that basically opens up the field for him. I would love to see him if Gunnar Helm comes out. So if Gunnar Helm comes out of Texas and he goes to the draft, I would love to see Jack Velling shift down to the Lone Star State, Texas, in that Sarkisian style of offense where they open it up for their tight ends. I think that would be a great fit for him. But that's me purely speculating and throwing on my analyst cap. I don't know if that's going to actually happen if Gunnar declares or not. That's a whole nother episode. But I agree with you. I think he needs to return to school. I think he needs some more seasoning, and he needs to get into a scheme fit that benefits him as a tight end.
Bill, a little off-topic question. What the hell happened to Amari Niblack at Texas? I have not seen him once this year. I'm just curious. It's off-topic.
No, you're completely fine. I would love to know as well. I think everybody that saw him come in was like, this guy is going to be the next Texas star out of that team, and he's just fallen off the face of the planet. So it's something I've got pinned in the back of my scouting report handbook that I'm going to take a look and figure out what potentially happened and if we see him move from Texas in the future. So,
hey, big finish. Last player of the episode.
All right. So Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vanderbilt, 6'4", 225. The big thing about Eli is he is a burner, folks. He's got elite, explosive straight line speed. Consistently, not only straight line speed, but he stacks defenders up and he just blows right by them. In addition to that, I said this earlier when I talked about him. So he actually accepted an invite to the East-West Shrine Bowl today. So I am going to love to see him. I said this earlier and I'm going to say it here. It was a spicy take then and I'm going to throw it back now. I think he is the best jump ball tight end in this entire class. When it comes to being able to pinpoint the ball, go up and get it, and also his jumping ability, especially on 50-50 balls. In addition to that, he's a converted quarterback. So he's got the experience in signal calling, so you see it in zone coverage recognition. He sits down in a zone and makes life easy for his quarterback. The big drawback, though, is he is severely undersized, 6'4", 225. That's more of a wide receiver style of frame than it is a tight end. So that's going to be a big question mark. In addition to that frame doesn't really lend itself well to his blocking at the point of attack. He's very raw from a run blocking standpoint. Despite all of that, though, this guy is an athletic nightmare for opposing linebackers and safeties. I have him in my 3rd round. He is squarely in my top 100 players right now before we even get to the Shrine Bowl. He reminds me a lot of Isaiah Likely from the Baltimore Ravens, that athletic pass-catching style of tight end. Not really going to be your top-tier option if you have like a Mark Andrews of the world, but he's going to be a very good tight end 1.5. It's going to be a guy that could start you a couple of spot starts here and there, but you don't really want to rely on him, especially with that light frame and that blocking issue and concern. But Josh, what do you see from Eli out of Vanderbilt on his tape?
I think Eli is not only one of the biggest risers in this year's draft class. I think besides the guys like Colston Loveland on their route running ability, he's one of the best just athletic receivers in this draft class. I have him at 6'3" and 5/10" at 235 pounds. So give or take, still adequate in the strength. That's his one drawback that teams will look at and scheme and where he gets drafted to is going to be the biggest thing for him in the NFL, because he's not going to be an inline tight end. He's not going to be a guy that moves people at the point of attack. You're not going to ask Eli Stowers to be that type of guy. But when you're talking about the receiving game, there is only one thing that he's solid at, and everything else that he's good or better at. His hands are good. His yard after catch ability is good. Like you mentioned before, with his frame and his length, he is really lengthy as a tight end converted quarterback. It's awesome to see translate. I think him transitioning from quarterback to tight end has been very smooth with his mental processing and toughness. He's really good at understanding zone coverages and man coverage leverage, like Bill mentioned before. I think his play speed is one of the best in this tight end draft class. I think his separation quickness is also up there as one of the best. So this guy is going to make his living as an F tight end off the line of scrimmage, outside on the perimeter, and he is going to be a mismatch against smaller DBs or even just average size defensive backs. He understands how to use his leverage to his advantage. He can separate really easily. He's a fluent mover. He can move with the quarterback off timing. You saw that at New Mexico State with Pavia, and you see it this year with Vanderbilt. When they're off schedule, he's looking straight at Pavia, and he's moving to an open part of the field, and he works well off schedule with the quarterback. So if you're talking about just a straight receiving tight end, Stowers is one of the best in this draft class, but his drawback is blocking. So scheme is going to be the biggest thing for him. I think he could be a starting tight end in the NFL, but you're going to have a backup tight end that you use on your rundowns to be effective. Yeah. I would like to see him almost with the Green Bay Packers. They have Musgrave, they have Tucker Kraft, they have those two good guys that they drafted early on a couple years ago. But Eli would also bring another dimension to that offense and be a really good friend for Jordan Love. So I would love to see him go to a scheme like that where he's not asked to block as much, but that's the one drawback you can have on him. Everything else you really get excited for with Eli Stowers.
So the offense that I was thinking of as you guys were describing them, and as a Bills fan, this is going to pain me to say, but if he goes to Miami with those fast wide receivers, add a fast tight end to that team, and there's a dimension that they don't currently have. And Miami definitely needs a tight end.
Yeah, it's a track meet in South Beach is what it's going to turn into.
Yeah. So, Bill, how about you? What kind of offense, like if you had to think of Stowers in an NFL offense, who's the offensive coordinator or maybe a tree of offensive coordinators?
Right. So I would tell you there's probably a couple. Miami, you already hit on it. But another one would be the Los Angeles Rams. Give Matt Stafford that over-the-threat scene. That would be a wonderful, wonderful fit for him, especially taking advantage of Stafford's arm. So I think Sean McVay would be a very good one. In addition, another one that I would love to see is Indianapolis. They have a need for tight end, and especially you need a security blanket for Anthony Richardson if you continue to develop Anthony Richardson. That's a whole nother episode for Quarterbacks Week that we could get into about Anthony Richardson, but if you're going to use his arm to its best ability, you need the guy who can get underneath the ball quickly and also go up and high point the ball. So I think if I'm an NFL GM either in Los Angeles or in Indianapolis, I'm immediately drafting Eli Stowers. Josh, what are you thinking as far as offensive fits for Eli?
I think Stafford has been begging for a guy like Eli Stowers for the past 5 years. Colby Parkinson, in his own regard, is a really solid tight end. And so I just think that length is really like the most underrated thing about him. He can really outstretch balls away from his frame. On top of him, he has good leaping ability. He would really help out Anthony Richardson with his accuracy issues over the middle of the field, along with his speed. So both of those hit it right on the hammer, the perfect spots for him. But if, let's just say, for example, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. If he joins the Baltimore Ravens, it's going to be hard for him to carve out a role just because of what they ask out of their tight ends. So scheme is going to be the biggest thing for Stowers in the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, so I already have an athletic tight end in David Njoku. But then if I throw Eli Stowers on the other side, it doesn't matter who our quarterback is. We've got an easy 5 to 7 yards every completion. And then Stowers just goes deep over the top as well. So the cool thing about this tight end class that I really love is how deep it is. I talked about it today on X, and the tight end comparisons for my top 10 there's some comps in there. David and Njoku comps, Tyler Eifert style guys, Dawson Knox guys, Cole Kmet guys, Isaiah Likely's like Eli Stowers. There's a little bit of everything, and this class goes deep. On average, you see 14 to 15 tight ends that could be potentially drafted per draft tech. Right now on my board, I have almost 30 with draftable grades.
Ooh.
Granted, some of those guys are going to come back to school. Some of those guys are going to transfer to other schools. But, I mean, we're talking there's probably enough tight ends in this class for every team in the NFL to take one.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, you guys have any parting words before we close this out? This has been a really good episode. In 45 minutes, we just nailed 8 players. So great job, guys.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Good, smooth all the way through. Bill always gives the great insights. Jim, you already know. So,
yeah. Josh brings it every single time. Jim leading the charge. If we haven't already said it, make sure you're following this channel. We drop draft content on the daily. Make sure you're following us on X. You've got Juice_T23 for Josh. I am at Spark Scouting. Jim is at NFL Draft Fanatic without the I if you're looking on X. We've got all sorts of draft content. We've got scouting reports. We've got other content coming down the pipeline. If you have requests on players you want us to look at, if there's a tight end that you see ESPN or CBS or Fox isn't talking about, send a request over. We have analysts that are easily able to dive in and get those scouting reports down. So, Jim, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
So, content on the channel every day. I believe today's Thursday as we're recording this. So tomorrow, Bill and Randall coming at you live with cornerbacks, wide receivers. It's always a great way to end the week. So we'll see you Friday night with Bill and Randall, and then we will see Josh doing some running backs and linebackers with Jake on Monday. So you want to learn about we have a deep tight end class. I think the running back class is more stacked than the tight end class, and that's saying something. So we got the running backs coming at you every Monday with a few linebackers sprinkled in too. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.